Greetings from Westeros. We are the justified ancients of Ashai. I am Jonik Caliph.
And I am Ara Tarek. In this episode, we're going to talk about Season 1, Episode 3, and the particular themes of songs in this episode. So we entitled it The Song of Tall and Small, because throughout the episode, we really get to see Duncan and Egg bonding together in various ways.
To set the scene, this episode, entitled The Squire, starts off with Egg. So he's practicing to be the best squire he can be and get his horse to be the best he can be. Everything's on the line, and this tournament is so important to Dunk. For Dunk to have any chance, he needs both the horse and the squire to be at their very best. They are bonding together. Dunk is teaching Egg how to sew, and then later we see them talking back and forth, kind of mocking each other, which leads to a discussion about breakfast. They go and have a real breakfast with eggs and meat. Later, to get out of the rain, they end up in the Baratheons' tent. The first song we see is when Egg is whittling a stick, singing Carefree, a song about the Targaryens of old.
Prince Baelor was the firstborn, Prince Maekar sprang out last. Daemon was the bastard, so they kicked his bastard. Grass is green in summer, green grass I adore.
I feel like when he was practicing in the morning to be a squire, that kind of put him in the mindset and had him really thinking about knights, horses, and battle and everything like that. Egg was in a very good mood. He had a good breakfast. He was bonding well with Dunk. He just started singing this song about knights and war heroes, which happened to mention some of his ancestors.
The question is, does it matter that they are Targaryens, that he's a Targaryen?
I think so.
To me, I don't think it matters, because I think that the fact that Dunk is just not even paying attention to it. So clearly he's heard this song before. He's heard kids sing this song. It's just like, this is a song that kids sing, not like, why would you be singing about the Targaryen?
I think Egg is singing it because his family is full of kings, knights, and heroes. People riding dragons, for God's sakes. And how is he going to live up to that? We know from later the conversation that he was having that his dream is to be a great knight, to win major war campaigns, to be granted lots of lands, and ultimately possibly put in song, because I feel like he's about to do something and he wants to be really good at it. And then he's singing a song about his uncle and his father being great war heroes and they're great knights. It's important to his psyche how Dunk feels not rememberable because he's a nobody and from nobody's family. But just as Dunk has those problems, Egg has the problem of he's a nobody in his family in comparison. But from Egg's point of view, he's 12th in line for the throne and he's the fourth son. Therefore, he's not going to inherit anything. So the only thing he can really do to establish himself is to be a great warrior and leader. This is one thing that he can do. And I think that singing that song about his ancestors is that psyche of, where we add another verse with my name.
I mean, obviously, I think it could be more than one thing. Now that you say that, I think it is relevant that it is his family. He probably is thinking about it. But I think also, too, that there is some truth to the fact that it is also a kid's song, that other kids would just be singing mindlessly, because the way that the lyrics flow with each other, with the bad words that are implied but kind of change, it's suggestively raunchy, not outright raunchy, as we see later. So yes, you have a kid's song that is kind of tongue-in-cheek with the raunchiness, but you also have a song that people sing about his family. I think those are both two important factors as he sings.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that makes songs or music so powerful, and in general, I think, is that they mean different things to different people. If Dunk is singing, it might just be a catchy tune that he likes. For Egg, it might have a lot more connotations with it because it's about people he knows. Well, Dunk is throwing up in the corner.
I missed that.
But Dunk doesn't hear him sing it. He was throwing up because he was nervous, because he thought that he was about to go out to do his first challenge at the tournament, which is kind of funny too, because, like Egg is singing about people being great knights and war heroes, and then you have Dunk in the background who's like throwing up just at the thought of going out. It's probably just a jingle he knows a million times and doesn't think anything of it, but he's like, okay, go get my armor. It's time to go. And that's when Egg tells him they have another day to practice, because on the first full day of the tourney, only lords and other well-known knights are allowed to challenge the champions.
The Knight of the Seven Kingdoms clearly has parts that are, as we've mentioned in previous videos, maybe gratuitous or just kind of thrown in there. You have the horse defecating this time, and then you have him throwing up. They're establishing every time they're going to have something being injected from a body. Another part about it being the Targaryens and being his family is that it's really recent, right?
Yeah.
So not only is there a song that was made about his family, it's a song that was made not that long ago, where these people were still alive, obviously. And that song is spread wide enough so that Egg might be singing it there, and Dunk is not going to necessarily think anything about it, unless he's just so preoccupied by what's going on with him and his stomach and what he's facing that he just doesn't pay attention to it. When people make songs, it's not like they have the internet and it can go viral quickly. It can take a little while to spread.
Like a minstrel is how information gets around. When I look at the world of the Song of Ice and Fire, I think like Middle Ages, I feel like they're like back in time. About people is through songs that people might go from town to town, singing a song that they wrote, and that's how it spreads. And then if people like it in the town, they start singing it, and then other singers start to sing it. And what they know about what's going on that's important to them, they put in song.
And obviously the well-to-do, the lords, have their own musicians who make up songs about them, and that's their job, is basically to give them the good PR, to make up these wonderful tales, to spread their reputations and their tales of glory and victory and so forth. So they try to push those out, especially now in this time where we are post dragons and the Targaryens have to be out among the people a lot more. So things like getting these things in song are going to be more important.
Showing that yeah, I think that's a good point, because when it shows up and sings the song for the Targaryens, they're doing it in a Targaryen positive way. I think this becomes very important later, because they're talking about the Blackfyre Rebellion, which is the most recent war that ended. And it's so recent, in fact, that his uncle and his father participated in it.
Kind of echoes to Julius Caesar, who said, "I know history will be good to me because I will be the one writing it." Now, I want to point out, too, talking about the Blackfyre Rebellion and the Blackfyres as the bad guys. This is the second or third time we've seen Egg, because there were times where he was pretend jousting, and he was like, "You Blackfyre, get away, you Blackfyre scum, or die, you Blackfyre scum." He certainly makes reference to it several times. And if you don't know the backstory of it, as I did not when I was first seeing it, you don't know specifically what this is about. You just think it's a kid who's kind of like might talk about pirates or cowboys or something else, robbers or whatever, some just generic bad guys of the day. But no, it's very specific. They're very specific bad guys that he particularly has been trained to think of as the worst of the worst.
We watched the Game of Thrones, right? It's still, that same thing is still going on. There are still people always plotting and overthrowing. You want the PR to get the people on your side of the story.
And I think another thing about this song is that it's a song that does talk about the rulers and the kings and the battles that they fought to maintain control and maintain power. And that's a contrast to a lot of the songs that are go on that we hear that are from the common folk or for the small folk, because as referenced in the Game of Thrones and as referenced by the innkeeper in the first episode, that what happens with kings and lords doesn't affect the small folk, right? It doesn't matter who's ruling them; they still have to plant their crops. They still have to, feed their kids. They still have to work, except for when there's battles that spill over to them and they lose family. And
so, in contrast to this song talking about these great noble deeds, war heroes and whatnot, on in the episode, there is a song that on face value is even way raunchier than the first one.
Okay, well, it's talking about a lady who lost 2 of her fingers, but she still uses the other fingers to pleasure gentlemen. Even though they only pay for 1 finger, they get the other 2 fingers for free.
I tried to buy a piggy, but I got the whole of She gave me all she had to give to more than what was.
This is a big contrast to the other one. Mm-hmm. Well, the second song is blatantly raunchy. It is very clear. They spell it out. They leave nothing suggested.
Another contrast is, and I think that this is one that Egg points out, because Egg is used to songs being sung about his family, where the actual names and deeds are being recorded. Where in this song, there was a real woman who did these things, but they're not going to use her name. In the other song, they're being named by name and their deeds. And in this song, it's just talking about deeds, but no name. And he talks to Duncan and asks, like, what's important? Like, is it your name and that people sing your name so that the deeds are associated with it? Or is it just the fact that people know what you did?
At the very beginning of where he says, what's the meaning? And he said, that's for a wiser man than me.
His question was something like, do you think Alice really existed? And Duncan said, I don't think that was her name. They probably just used that name because it fit in the lyric of the song. Aegon says, well, why would they take the time to record someone's deeds and not mention the person who did it? And then maybe it is a song on honor, like just like my other one, that I was singing. And then Dunk was like so surprised because he's like, what? How is this sexual acts, that this woman was performing honorable? Well, she was using the gifts that she had to do the best she could.
Egg asked him a question about the song, and he said, well, that's for a wiser man than me to answer. And then Egg answers the question. We know that Dunk is not necessarily the sharpest tool, and we know that Egg is really brilliant. That's come out in many, many ways before. And this is a subtle kind of setup to that, or not so subtle, perhaps.
Egg opens up, talked about all of his dreams and ambitions. And we know that Duncan said he wants to be so brilliant that he wants his name to be in song one day. So this is kind of really relevant to the both thinking, because, it's the names that are in songs. And he's kind of like, will my name be in a song? Because maybe they won't put my name. They'll just put my deeds. And so they're not fooling around when they're talking about they want to be in song someday.
But then I think this kind of leaves the question, would they be okay to be in song if their names are not used? If they change the names, but their deeds live on, would that be fulfilling to them? Or would they be more fulfilled where their names get mentioned, like in the first song? So it brings to mind the question of what is more important in your life and in how you see things. Is it that your way of life, your values live on? Or is it that your name and that who you are and what you stood for lives on? Which of those two is more important when it's one or the other. And traditionally, I would say that for kings and queens and the lords, the higher nobility, they were very concerned about their name. And Egg basically says, we do know her name. Her name is Hope. And she is available for all who invoke it, invoke her name.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to that he's naming a characteristic, not a person's actual name.
Yeah.
And also that characteristic happens to be hope, the one thing that Dunk sorely needs at this moment, or is basically living on. He said that's all he's got is hope.
And a reflection of what he was thinking, which is, am I going to make a name for myself? Are people going to remember my deeds? And what is important? What if they don't? Is it just important that I existed and I'm on the list of a Targaryen and that's my spot on the family tree and I will always be remembered just for that? Or do I want to not be remembered just for that and want to do great deeds that are remembered?
He's trained by Meisters how to, understand things and learn what you need to learn. Mm-hmm. And Dunk is from the exact opposite, right? He doesn't know where his next meal is going to come from generally. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what's ahead of him. He doesn't know what kind of life he's going to have. Mm-hmm. So when he hears songs, he doesn't think too much about them because there's not a lot. He doesn't think a lot about much of anything. Yeah. He doesn't have to.
Another difference between them is that the world there's no friends or family that are like, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. So he has no expectations set by anybody. Whereas Egg has high expectations placed upon him. Even though he's 12th, he's still a Targaryen. There's certain expectations that are carried with that name.
And when they think that he's missing and maybe dead, they mention that wars have been started for less. So we will discuss that in more detail in our next episode about the Targaryens.
Stay tuned.
Make sure you watch the next episode.
Things get very spicy.
We are the Justified Ancients of Ashai. Like and subscribe.